I call to order the Stokes Reynolds Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees meeting for August 8th, 2022, 4:30 p.m. First item on the agenda will be the invocation. I'll ask Commissioner Barney Castle if he would lead us in the invocation.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord. Thank you for your many blessings. Thank you for another day of life. Thank you for the beautiful weather, Lord. Lord, we go, we just guide us as we do committees for the county. Be pleasing to you. Lord, we pray for all the sick and injured in our county. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The next item is public comments, and I don't think we have anybody that signed up for public comments today, so we'll move to the next item, which is approval of the July 11, 2022 board minutes. And I'll ask for a motion to approve those when you're ready. Make a motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the next thing is the ethics conflict of interest statement. It is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in that particular item.
How do we know what is exactly? I read this, and Commissioner Morris, what is do we have, it just says, if so, identify the conflict or appearance of any conflict. Do we have a written statement from the Board of Trustees here concerning the Stokes Reynolds Memorial Hospital that is in writing that spells out what the conflicts are? In other words, and it just says, does any member have any known conflict? How do we know what conflicts are?
I think it's up to the individual to make a determination if you think there may be one with the business we're doing.
Do you think we should have a written?
Well, yeah, we could do that, I guess. I thought it was the same as the one we were using for the other board. It would be basically the same thing.
The board
The commissioner board.
Right. So what about the committees, such as the Hospital Operations Committee? What would their conflict of interest look like? Is it also the same as
It would basically be the same thing, yeah.
I think we need somewhere in where we got the Fifth Amendment, Madam Chair, on action tonight that we need to clarify conflicts of interest for the Board of Trustees for the hospital and all the committees that serve under the hospital. If it's going to be the same as what the Board of Commissioners' conflicts of interest are, we need to know what they are, because I can assure you that has come into play in a couple of meetings I've been in recently, and the Attorney General of North Carolina was called to verify this.
Okay.
So we've got a, Ty, you
Go ahead,
comment on
Ty.
that?
Yeah, if you'll look on in your notebook,
I gave my notebook
You can look at mine if you want to.
Figure out. Pam, do you happen to have Wayne's notebook too, or do you know if he turned it in or kept it?
Christie, did anybody did they have names on them? I've got them here, but.
No, those is Wayne's and Ronnie's. The others took theirs with them. I got a list, that little sticky note.
Mystery
on
solved.
top of who had what.
That's the reason I couldn't find mine.
Well, I knew I'd turn mine in, and I told Shannon
I thought
that
I
I
did.
turned it in.
Okay, what
Okay,
page?
Tom, what page is that?
Look on page 13 behind the last tab, North Carolina General Statute. And this is 131E-14.2, which is a conflict of interest statement for members and no member of the board of directors or employee of a public hospital. That person's spouse shall do either of the following. So that's set out the remainder of that page and most of the next page. And all members of the board of directors and all employees of a public hospital, which our hospital, that applies to county hospitals, or a corporation that's owned by a county hospital. So we are subject, or you are subject, and the employees of the hospital are subject to that conflict of interest policy.
What page is
It does
that,
not
Tom?
apply to the
What page you on?
page 13.
It's tab 13.
Behind the last tab.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
The conflict of interest.
We did have a conflict of interest when we were operating under the bylaws. We could easily bring that back out.
Well, I will carry this over into our county commissioners meeting. I serve on two committees, the Board of Trustees of Forsyth Tech and the Stokes Partnership for Children. And we certainly have, ours are spelled out to the T. I mean, they are very specific on if you have a conflict of interest. We've run into a conflict of interest, and that's why we're still bringing up another person tonight on the Board of Trustees at Forsyth Tech. And the situation is that I want to know, I see this now, and it's certainly not the same as what the county commissioners' conflict of interest is. It's nowhere close to it. Just glancing down it, I can tell you right off, I see things in here that we don't have as conflicts of interest. So I think we need to get, if it was to get down the road, if something were to happen and they found somebody with a conflict of interest, and I think we need to specify somehow.
Needs to be more spelled
Yeah,
out.
well, or either say the conflict of interest that is in this book that is not equal, it is not the same as the conflict of interest as the county board of county commissioners, because it's not. I don't know if you've ever, I've read ours several times. And this one here, well, I can tell you right now, looking at the first page, it's nowhere close to our conflict of interest. So I just want to know, we're going by this? Is this what we're going by? Because we are the board of trustees now for the hospital.
You have to go by this, by statute. then,
Well, this
right?
is the minimum standard. So if you wanted to adopt a conflict of interest policy, which included all of this, plus some more, you could certainly do that. And Section 7 of Article 11 of the proposed the board shall develop and implement a written conflict of interest policy.
Okay, Ty, can I ask you a question? Let's look at 131E 14.2, and let's look at B. The fact that a person or person's spouse owns 10% or less stock of a corporation or has a 10% or less ownership in any other business entity, etc. How are we going to know? We've never been provided with who owns stock or whatever. How are we going to know as a board of trustees who, if that's true or not?
Well, it would be each board member's obligation to reveal that to the board.
It would. It sure would. And
And it's stated in here that each board member, this applies to board members and employees.
exactly. That's key to me. Not only just the board members.
So it doesn't include committees, so you would need, and the proposed bylaws state specifically.
So the hospital operations committee, I think they have what do y'all have, Rick, 9 or 10 on that?
No, I think it is.
I believe it was 8 or 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I know we approved them all, but I
Yeah, we do the statement at those meetings too. We do the conflict.
how would we
statement.
know if any of those members?
Well, the committee would have to adopt the bylaws. And then it would be the obligation, once they're adopted, it would be the obligation of each committee member to reveal any conflict or potential conflict to the other board members.
That's correct. And so therefore, does the hospital operations committee have the same conflict of interest that we're looking at right here?
Should have.
No, the committees are not subject to this statute. Just the board of directors and the employees. So the committee would have to adopt.
Well,
That wouldn't be a
I'm
problem.
going to have to tell you, Ty, then I'm looking at the Fifth Amendment that we're supposed to act on tonight, and I'm looking at Article 11 on that, Ty, and it's at the bottom of page 11, and it closes out on page 12, and it says Conflicts of Interest Policy. You got it?
Right.
Okay, it says the Board of Trustees and all committees of the board shall develop and implement a written conflicts of interest policy designed to require full disclosure by trustees and officers of situations and associations that might constitute conflicts of interest with the corporation's objectives. In addition, the Board of Trustees and committees shall include a conflicts of interest agenda item at each meeting of the board and or committee.
Right.
So, I keep hearing the word and committees.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is the statute does not include committees.
But this does. The Fifth Amendment that we're supposed to vote on
Our
tonight.
proposed Fifth Amendment and our existing bylaws, we're operating under the Fourth Amendment, they require the same thing.
Right.
So,
You're saying the statute doesn't, but this does.
oh yeah, sure, yeah, I agree.
So therefore, to me, all committees, hospital operations board committees, everything has to follow.
Right. Well, they're obligated to follow it right now. Because we're operating under the Fourth Amendment, which includes this.
So how are we going to, so when would we, as a board of trustees, ever know that a committee member broke a conflict of interest policy and didn't disclose? How would we know here?
You wouldn't unless the committee member revealed it. Disclosed it, and they would be obligated to disclose it.
They should be obligated to close it, correct?
Sure, yeah, sure. They would be obligated.
Or they could be legally at fault. Is what I've been told by the Attorney General of North Carolina. Okay. So section 7 then to me is saying that the Board of Trustees, which is us 5 commissioners, correct? We're the Board of Trustees. I don't know, Pam, how many committees y'all have. I'm sure you have several. I don't know. I know you got the Hospital Operations Committee. Is that the only one?
Plus, we got other boards, Health Board, DSS Board, all that. I would think this applies to everybody.
I was going to say, then would this apply to all those committees?
We have this on our DSS board. We have this statement.
Do you?
Would the statute apply to those committees?
That's a board, not a committee.
Would this apply to, say, all 9 members of the Hospital Operations Committee?
Well, it already applies. Under the existing amendment, it already applies.
Amendment 4, right?
But unless the committee has actually taken action at a meeting to adopt that conflicts of interest policy, that they're not subject to it. They are obligated under the bylaws
Right.
to adopt the conflict of interest policy.
So what you're
So
saying
is
is
it adopted?
they haven't, but they need to do it.
So
At
it's
the
not
first
been adopted.
meeting-
I don't think we've ever adopted it.
At the first meeting of the committee, it should be adopted. And any new committees that are formed at the first meeting, it should be adopted.
So therefore, before the vote tonight, to me, on the 5th Amendment, I've got to know that the Hospital Operations Committee or any other group up there, it's got to be put in somehow, inserted as an amendment tonight or something, because, let me give you an example. What if I wanted to buy a house? And I went and I liked that house, and I wanted to buy it. And the realtor lays the contract down in front of me and says, here's everything about the house. And they look in and they say, well, everything's on here except the price. How much does it cost? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll discuss the price of the house after you sign the contract saying you want it. Do you see what I'm saying? They're not going to sign that contract if they don't know. And I want to know. That's my whole objective. I want to know this has been adopted.
You as the trustees need to make a decision as to whether or not you want to adopt this statutory conflict of interest policy, or you want to adopt one that's more includes more than this. If you want to adopt the one that you as the Board of Commissioners operate on, you will have to make that decision.
You're right. That's exactly right.
If I may, it was decided that this statement would be read to this board the same as it is for the Hospital Operations Committee. So both of those are in alignment as we currently have been meeting. The Stokes Reynolds Memorial Hospital, Inc. had a written conflict of interest that, as Ty said, had much more detail. If you all choose to have that, we can have that conflict of interest with each section. It gives a written, or it gives a space for you to say which section you might have a conflict with, and each person can sign. So each of you would have to sign for this board. Each Hospital Operations Committee member could sign for that if you also choose. But this had been decided to be.
So Pam, would you sign something that you didn't know what was in it? Would you sign, if somebody laid you a sheet of paper and you really didn't understand what was in it or what it was entailed in that, would you go ahead and sign off on it and say, yeah, I approve it, if you didn't really know what was in it?
I'm not sure I'm following you. Are you saying for the bylaws?
Yeah, or anything else.
Well,
You go buy a car, if you go buy a car,
proposed, they're not being,
Right.
they're not
Well,
being voted.
the bylaws normally don't include the conflict of interest penalty. They're usually adopted separately by resolution. And the
been
bylaws,
adopted? Has it been adopted by resolution?
they should have been adopted in the past. Because this is the same statement that's in the original bylaw. So I don't know if they've ever been adopted in the past or not. But under the existing bylaws and the proposed Fifth Amendment, the board is making the statement that they shall be adopted. Conflict of interest policy shall be adopted. And you need to make a decision whether you want to adopt the one that mirrors the statute, or do you want to adopt a different. Of course, you can adopt a different conflict of interest policy, but the board of directors and employees of the hospital are going to be subject to that as well as the statutory.
That's correct. Yep, I got you.
So if you want to include the conflict of interest policy as part of the bylaws, you can do that. Or you can adopt it separately outside the bylaws.
And see, the reason I brought this up is, as I've read through this, and I noticed that it was on action for tonight, I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear on how this works here.
On the Fifth Amendment you're talking about,
Yes. Yeah.
we can delay adopting the Fifth Amendment to the next meeting if you want to have us adopt bylaws, like at a hospital operations committee.
You're having it available in case it needs to be adopted, correct?
Yes, you are not adopting the Fifth Amendment. It's on the agenda
We're approving
to approve the form and content
content,
of the proposed.
content. It's a very big word, content. Yep.
So it'll be ready if you need to adopt it, if we decide to adopt it later.
The conflict statement is already in the Fourth Amendment that we're operating under now.
And what's in the third, and
It's just that the Hospital Operations Committee has not
Right.
adopted that as their, like, that's what they need to do. Or we need to put something in here that we're asking them to do that.
I've read over this 3 times today. I mean, that was the only one thing that caught my eye, and I'm gonna be upfront. I was gonna ask for a delay to the next meeting till they could do that.
I think that's fine. And do you want us to bring to you a proposed conflict of interest?
Yes.
yeah, we can bring to you
Yeah,
the
sure.
previous copy and what each individual member would look at and sign and
Sure.
disclose.
That's good. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Tom.
I remember from hospital conflicts of interest years ago with some of the boards. For example, when I was on the mental health board, I would disclose that to the mental health board as well as to the hospital board.
And every board I'm on, I have to disclose if I have a conflict. Everyone.
If you want it that formal, then it will just provide you with an opportunity to write that and sign that. Typically, those are done annually, so if you would like for that to be done by both boards, I don't think anybody would have a problem.
Right. I would prefer that. Thank you.
You want to delay,
I'd like, when it comes to consent, approval of the agenda, to delete that until the next meeting.
on
Fifth,
when we get to the commissioners meeting.
yeah, that's fine.
All right, we can
So
hold off.
what we need to do then is bring to the next Board of Trustees meeting a conflict of interest policy, separate, that can be adopted by both boards.
Okay,
And then we'll do the Fifth Amendment thing after that. That's fine.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you for working with me.
No sweat. Any problem, any other questions on that topic? Okay, the next topic on the agenda is the audit update, and Pam, this is based on some questions, I think, discussion from our last meeting, so Pam's got some information related to the audits that, that they go through up at the hospital. Did you hand that out already, the sheet? This sheet? I think I just did the agenda maybe, so.
Sorry, Christie's not here to help. Okay.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as the financial audits, 2017, those were done by Matheny and Steves, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Horn LLP out of Richland, Mississippi. 2018, they were done by Horn LLP, and since that time, 2019, Group Present, Banks, Finley, and White out of College Park, Georgia, are performing the audits. I did go ahead and put in there, similar to what the county, I'm sure, has to do for the larger grants, that were COVID grants. We have to do a CFA grant. And you remember what that stands for, is the CFA grants? I know we've had to do them for anything over 500,000. That was a COVID grant with the state. That had to be part of the audit. As far as workman's comp audits, those are done annually by the insurance companies. Accident Fund was the one who had done the 2019, 2020, and 2021 audits. For cost reports, we do a Medicare cost report annually, and then a portion of that is then taken and provided to North Carolina DHHS for Medicaid. So we've had to do those annually. The cost report preparers are third-party preparers. They ask us for pertinent documents. It's a lot of data that has to be pulled from the hospital financials, revenues, everything that goes in, everything that comes out for our financials. And then Medicare goes through its own process to review the Medicare cost report, and then Medicaid carries over and has Myers and Stauffer do the cost report audits, which are more formal than the Medicaid. I got the mail just as I was coming down here, and this is an example of one of the Myers and Stauffer cost report audits. And if you can imagine keeping up with the multiple years that they do, this is the final from 2018. Tomorrow we're doing a call to start the 2020. So 2019 is in there somewhere. And another preparation, but I think you had asked Sonia, did we not get bound copies?
Right.
We do, but the delay in getting from the state or any of these audits, because there's so many elements, can be delayed. For surveys, we have health and compliance surveys. So for the hospitals and our hospital operated clinics, DMV is our hospital accreditation body. You may have heard of Joint Commission. When we became Critical Access and Pioneer came in, they had us do DMV. Let's see there, I have a typo on hospital. Hall became a rural health clinic, then it had its own survey in 2019. And there are other routine building and operations, for example, the cafeteria, fire alarms, those type things that any business would have. But these were just a few, and there are many layers of surveys underneath all of these surveys where people come in and are looking at different pieces of our operation.
Anything else? You guys have any questions on the audit stuff there?
Thank you for this information.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Pine Hall X-ray update. Ron Petrie called me last night at home to ask me how this was going, so I'm going to call him back tonight after I hear the update and tell him.
Okay, well, the physicist came last Thursday and gave us state approval that it is safe and working properly. Now we can get the interfaces with the EMR, with the radiologist, to read the x-rays and let all the insurance companies know that we now can add x-ray if needed for a visit there. So we are working and safe and ready to move forward.
So it's, the machine's all set up, it's working, it's been approved by the state. It's, so all you gotta do is kind of get the operations going, basically. What's the date for, a target date for doing that?
When everybody says that all those pieces are working properly.
Okay.
The, I guess, piece for everybody is getting that letter from the physicist that says everything's okay.
Okay.
That letter has to go to the state, and be on file there.
So it'll be another month, or maybe a month or so, or something like
I
that.
would say 1 month sounds.
About 1 month. You
reasonable.
should be able to actually go get an x-ray, hopefully in about a month, right? Okay. Okay, you guys have any questions on the x-ray?
Sounds good.
Good to see you there.
Yeah. Sure, Veland come over there and use it pretty soon. I hope not, but I'm glad it's there in case they need it, so. Okay, next is our action agenda. We're going to postpone the Fifth Amendment to the next meeting and adopt the, and make sure we get the conflict of interest thing sorted out like we want it before we do that. So, then the next one's the draft RFP for the feasibility study. I hadn't got any changes back from anybody on that. I talked to Glenda and Shannon this morning. One thing we decided it might be helpful to add to the feasibility study would be to add an attachment to it that, and the attachment would just be all that language that's in the state budget about the CON and about the money, the 10 million. It's referenced in the executive summary and other places in there, but probably be helpful for them to have the exact language to read it when they're trying to do a proposal, put a proposal together. So
I had a couple of concerns and changes that I spoke to Glenda about when I had to come up here for another meeting at 1, and so I just talked to her about it
Okay.
then. But on page 5 of 11, under objectives of this RFP, I think it would be better to state it like this: a long-term projection of the best location or locations for hospital services for the entire county with the consideration of geographic areas and the possibility of 2 hospitals, one of which could be the critical access hospital in Danbury. I think that it needs to be stated more like that instead of potentially 2 hospitals and one would be the critical access. I think it's too narrow of scope when we do that, and I think we just need to keep it as open, and we're paying the third party to tell us what will work best, so I feel like just
just
keeping
change
it.
would to could, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And I think Glenda, you wrote that in your notes, didn't you? I went ahead and had her make the notes I was saying so she would get what I was saying. And the next one, evaluate, I just have a question, I guess, clarification, because I don't know. I mean, I feel like we could even just delete this or leave it out because I don't know. I think it could confuse them, but maybe not. Which says evaluate potential partnership for 2 hospitals to complement services versus duplication of services if 2 new hospitals were constructed and specifically address the future of services currently being provided by the critical access at the King satellite facility. So the part specifically address the future of services currently being provided. So the services that are currently provided there is, I guess, the ortho services. Is that right? At the King satellite?
We do surgeries and x-rays in addition to,
There, you do surgeries at the site that's Ortho Carolina?
well, it's our site and they lease space.
But they actually operate on people there?
Yeah, we do surgeries
At
in that center.
At that center. Well, I think it's redundant because if you talk about 2 hospitals, then you're not going to need any of the services that are currently there because they would be provided by a second hospital. If that's what this is talking about, it's 2 hospitals, possibly.
That's kind of what it's saying, don't duplicate the services there.
Well, I think that's, then I think that.
That's the first thing you would do, I think, if you had 2 hospitals, is you would
Well,
make
I
sure the
think
2 don't
that
duplicate
the first
each
part
other.
of that is, it addresses that. It says evaluate potential partnership for 2 hospitals to complement services versus duplication of services. And I think that's all you could say, and period. And that explains it. I think all the other part is kind of confusing.
Well, it's more complicated than that because our hospital license specifically has assets that would need to be discussed as part of any operations in King. So that they would know to evaluate that and discuss whether there would be discussions for moving those assets or keeping them with the critical access hospital license.
But just to make sure, to go on with what Rick was saying, I had my knee surgery May the 10th, and I had it done at Davie Medical. Had it done by a doctor who works for Baptist Atrium. He leases out rooms at Davie Medical to do his surgeries. He doesn't. I didn't go to Baptist and have my surgery. I had my surgery at Davie Medical Center in Moxville. He does basically all his surgeries at Davie Medical, but yet he's an employee or tied in with Atrium or Baptist. So, as sort of saying, I guess what Rick and Sonia were saying is that he could have done that surgery at Baptist, but what he's doing is he's doing them at Davie Medical, whereas Novant does their surgery, a lot of their doctors that does orthopedic or knee replacements or things, they go to Clemens. I just talked to a lady the other day that had hers done at Clemens Medical. So are we saying that if it was 2 hospitals, you would choose one to do all the surgeries, or you'd continue to do surgeries in King and Danbury, or what I want clarification on what we're saying.
I think what we're asking for is for them to tell us what would work the best and be
Yeah.
the most feasible for our county to do. I guess is what, that's why I'm saying keep it as wide open as possible so and stay very general so they can come back with what all the options are. So, I mean, but the people that are reading the RFP will probably,
They'll know to do that.
will
I think.
understand what you're asking for,
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure.
they'll
Yeah,
understand.
because they're gonna look at what's on the current license and then compare that with, what other things are being proposed, so.
And the other concern I had was on page 6 of 11, just where it says, and I mentioned this at the last time we talked about, provide probable cost for a new critical access hospital construction project. And this says that includes a nursing home facility, and I would just like it to say with and without, so that we can compare with it and without it.
I don't think our model will work without a nursing home.
Well, that's why we need them to tell us if it will or it won't.
I mean, Pam, when the whole thing's set up based on having a nursing home, which strengthens the critical access hospital. That's what the folks from Texas told us.
That was certainly their opinion. So, again, people who understand and will be responding to the RFP will know and understand.
So what would it hurt to say with or without so that they can tell us how it would work with it or without it so we can compare?
Well, that you're asking for specificity there that,
It's no more specific than what it says right now, which says that does include a nursing home. That's very specific.
right, but I'm saying, overall, you were saying specificity, but they will be giving that answer. They will say if it does not make sense. But certainly you can word it however you would like.
Well, I just would like to hear how it would work with it and how it will work without it.
Well, I doubt if it would work without it, but I mean, I suppose we can put that in.
Well, it obviously is working other places without it because most counties don't own and operate could have the potential to operate a nursing home. So, what I'm saying
We
is,
can put that word in if that's satisfy you. And is that all we need to do then?
yeah, that's all I had.
Okay. But can we get this approved with those changes and get this thing issued?
I'm fine with that. I'll make a motion, we approve it with those changes.
Okay. Have a second.
So are we voting on this during this meeting?
Both meetings. I
And the
think.
next meeting, yeah.
Okay, and I want to make sure on the commissioners meeting.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And also, I think on the dates, I was talking about that with Glenda, that they could get it out the 12th.
Yeah,
If we voted it today, and the date for questions would be the 18th, and the deadline would be 9/12.
yeah.
So that's pretty good. All right.
All right, the next item on the agenda is open discussion. Anybody have any particular subjects you,
If I
Jennifer?
could go back to the bylaws, I just want to make sure that you all understood what we were bringing back for changes, under the medical staff section on pages, that starts on page 8. We did not realize at the time, that the wording for clinical privileges for the medical staff section is now 4 privileges, so that's just something that has changed in the time, since we had operated under these bylaws. And then on page 11, the fiscal year would just need to be updated at whatever point you might choose to adopt this. It's currently has been changed to the calendar year end, but depending on what the county might want, they might want to ask for it to be changed back to the fiscal
So
Well,
those change.
that's, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, you go ahead.
Well, my question is, those will change in what we're operating under now, in the 4th. Those changes, because we're not gonna adopt this
Not gonna
unless
adopt
we
it.
have to.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So when it would be adopted, those decisions would be made
Okay.
about the fiscal year end at that point.
So it doesn't need to
Go ahead
change,
and-
it doesn't need to change under what we're currently operating under. Okay,
Yeah, we're not gonna change anything now, but as
Okay.
I said, this is just
I see what,
ready on hold
okay,
in case you all need to use it.
okay, I see, okay, I got you
So
now.
if we need to, then we'll
Okay,
say what that would.
all right, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, Ms. Mendenhall.
Well, that's okay. My apologies. And certainly, the July 1 to June 30th is, I mean, that's our normal
Fiscal year.
time, so that's not a problem at all to me. I just want to make sure that we do follow up on the rest of the highlighted area where it says that after the end of each fiscal year before October 30, that we will receive a full and detailed report of the receipts and disbursements. And see, it's my 6th year on here, so I'm trying to remember. I have to probably get Amber or Shannon to go back into the minutes, make sure. I couldn't tell you right now. I mean, I think that's good. I just don't know. I came in 2016, so have we, after the end of the fiscal year and before October 30th, have we received a full and detailed report of the receipts and disbursements during the last 6 years?
This would be if you were operating the hospital. You have not, because you have not been operating the hospital.
But we are the Board of Trustees, correct?
You are, but that,
We're under a lease.
That doesn't mean
Yes.
anything.
well, yeah, it means a lot.
Okay.
But for these bylaws, what it means in these bylaws is
This
you're
is-
operating the hospital, so you're gonna get everything 3 months after the close of
So
the
we,
fiscal year.
okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, if we are operating it.
Right,
That's when you take it back over and
Gotcha.
don't lease it.
yeah.
Thank you.
But you have not been because
Okay.
it's not.
I got
this
you.
scenario.
Council, I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I need.
Anybody have anything else you want to discuss under open discussion? Yeah, again, a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?